Let's turn our attention back now to the politics of the day. Joining me live in the studio is the Minister for Social Services, Amanda Rishworth. Thanks very much for your time. I do want to ask you about the Middle East reaction here in a moment, but let's start with the big news in your area of responsibility. Today, the paid parental leave extension. It's $1.2 billion out to the year 2026-27. The benefits to the broader economy are going to be much greater than that. Have you got a dollar figure as to just how much it'll be putting back in terms of improved worker participation?
Well, of course, it has that multiplying effects, improving paid parental leave. It allows the connection of the workplace and the employee. It allows people to take time to go out. So I don't have a figure, but it is a multiplier effect in terms of the economy, in terms of participation. What taking our paid parental leave to 26 weeks really is very good for the economy. It's good for employers, but of course, most importantly, it's good for families.
Is 4 weeks reserved for both parents? If, say, one of the parents is unable to take the 4 weeks, can that go on top of the other parental leave that the family has?
So one of the key objectives of this legislation is to promote shared care. And so what the expansion to 26 weeks does is reserve 2 periods of 4 weeks for each parent. The rest of the 18 weeks can be split up any way people choose. But it can also be used concurrently, so by both parents at the same time, up to 4 weeks. So we've tried to make this as flexible as possible, at the same time recognising that both parents may want to take time off. If it's a single parent, that they'll get the full 26 weeks. But one of the objectives of this is to encourage it, so it is use it or lose it for that 4 weeks.
Okay, so the Greens are backing, they like the idea of what you're doing, but they want you to put superannuation on this as well, to include super for paid parental leave. And given that women end up with a much lower, on average, superannuation nest egg than men, is that something you're keen to do?
Well, firstly, I'd say there hasn't been reform since Labor first introduced paid parental leave. We've had a look at what our priorities are, and our first priority was extending the scheme to 26 weeks. That was an important priority, and we've now introduced the legislation to do that. Obviously, superannuation is something that we recognise as an important part of a women's working life, and accumulating superannuation. It's something, of course, we would like to do, but there are many pressures on the budget.
Are you worried the Greens will try and block?
Well, I hope they won't. I hope they won't. This is due to start on the 1st of July next year. It needs to be passed through the Parliament by March next year. So there is time pressure to make sure it's all in place so people can benefit. I welcome constructive suggestions, but it's not something the government's in a position to do at the moment. So I will be encouraging the Greens, and in fact, all of the Senate, to back our paid parental leave bill, because this is good for the economy and good for families.
One of the areas, again, of your responsibility, it's National Carers Week this week. I know we've got a lot of carers who watch this program, and I know they're not the sort of people that necessarily go and seek help or government support. They just get on with what they do day in, day out. Are you going to try and make it easier for carers to get support?
Oh, absolutely. Our unpaid carers actually do an amazing job. There's over 2.5 million unpaid carers in this country that care for perhaps a parent or in fact, perhaps a child that has a disability, a family member, an aunt, an uncle. They are really some of the most unsung heroes in our community. And what we're actually doing is today, in National Carers Week, we're celebrating carers, but we also are looking and turning our mind to how we can give them more support. So I've announced today that the government will be looking at a national carers strategy to look at what more we can do. But today we also announced our carers workplace initiative, which supports businesses to support their carers. So we know a lot of carers need a little bit more flexibility or a little bit more predictability. And what we've launched today is tools, education for employers. And also, if they meet the national standards, we'll be able to display the logo for being a carer inclusive workplace. This is a way that we can support employers better meet the needs of carers. But our strategy, in addition to that, will also look at what more we can do.
Well, that's something that will be welcomed by many. Selfless. It's a selfless group of people by definition. Now, just finally on Israel and the Middle East, the debate here. Just a few moments ago, the opposition leader called on the Prime Minister to visit Tel Aviv next week. He's going to Washington, but he said, Mr Dutton, that Mr Albanese's top priority should be to go to Israel. What's your thinking on that?
Well, firstly, I would say that the Prime Minister has been obviously deeply engaged with, for example, our ambassador from Israel to Australia. He's been being regularly briefed, and obviously we had the motion in the Parliament this week. In terms of his trip to America, there's important work to be done in America. Our relationship is very important. And so the Prime Minister is working, as our government, right across the board when it comes to what is an important visit to America, but obviously also a deeply difficult conflict in the Middle East. And I would say the other priority of our government has been about getting Australians out of Israel and other areas within the Middle East. It's really, really important that we are responsive to that, and we have been as a government. And so that has also been a big focus of what we've been doing.
Ed Husick and NRL have said that the people in Gaza are being collectively punished for the barbarity and the atrocities of Hamas. Susan Lee, the opposition deputy, said Ed Husick's claims have exposed Labor's deep division on the question of Israel and raised serious questions about whether these comments reflect a new official position of the government. What's your assessment of Susan Lee's response there?
I don't accept what Susan Ley has said. I don't accept that the government has been very clear-eyed here. We have been very clear that Israel has a right to defend itself, but the importance of civilian life must be at the forefront, and that any civilian life, innocent civilian life lost in this conflict is a tragedy. So I reject what Susan Ley has to say, and I would say that the motion put before the Parliament that received almost support across the whole Parliament demonstrates that to reject the terrorist attacks of Hamas, to recognise the loss of civilian life, call on all parties to respect international law, and importantly recognise that there needs to be, that our ultimate aim is a two-state solution.
Minister for Social Services, Amanda Rishworth, appreciate your time.
Thank you.